Welcome to Parenting Decoded, a podcast for practical approaches to parenting. I'm Mary Eschen. In this podcast, we're going to talk about separation anxiety. Most parents seem to get hit with this at some point in our parenting journey. It can start around 6 or 7 months and usually goes away gradually through early childhood. But sometimes we're just put to the test with separation issues, and we wish someone would let us know what's normal, what's extreme, and give us some ideas about what to do. We are so blessed today to have Jessica O'Connor, a licensed marriage and family therapist, to help step us through ideas in dealing with separation at different ages and stages. She has a family practice in Campbell, California, and works primarily with school-age children, adolescents, parents, and families, and comes to us with a huge amount of experience in helping families with this topic. Welcome, Jessica. So happy to have you on this podcast.
Thank you, Mary. I'm so happy to be here and excited to be talking about separation anxiety.
Yeah, why don't we start off with, would you just explain what it is and what happens?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. Separation anxiety is really an excessive fear or worry about being separated from a parent. And when I use the word parent, I'm talking about any attachment figure, whether it be a biological parent, a grandparent, a coach, a teacher, a sibling, anyone that child feels a connection to. A child that's experiencing separation anxiety may have nightmares about being separated from their parent. They may have nausea. They may have worry or fear that their parent may be hurt or harmed while they're separated. They might have a hard time going to school or sleeping alone without their parent close by.
Yeah, I have a lot of parents I've worked with who their kids won't sleep alone, and it's just drives them crazy. Not to mention things like school drop-offs or preschool drop-offs and stuff like that. So can you tell us a little bit about, what's normal, what's age appropriate and stuff like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we all have individual differences. Every one of us does. And a little bit of anxiety is actually quite useful. Anxiety can help to keep us cautious. It can help to keep us safe. Separation anxiety is developmentally normal for young children. It's common to see separation anxiety starting around 6 months through 18 months of age. Even in the toddler years, it can be normal and appropriate for the child to experience some separation anxiety when separating from their parent. And that makes sense. Babies are not born into this world able to take care of themselves. We are dependent at a young age on our parent. And so when a child steps into a new environment, like preschool for the first time, this could be one of the first moments that they experience that separation from their parent. And a little bit of apprehension is normal.
And as you said, it's not only normal, but healthy.
It is. We want to be connected. And this is something we feel throughout the lifespan, not only just as a young child, but as we grow and develop and we have relationships, we feel connected and can feel a little unsure about separating from our connected person at that time.
I worry about families who have kids who are the ones that are always going with any stranger.
Yeah.
And they aren't reluctant about anything. It's like, oh my gosh, that's dangerous. But the flip side is the parents who can't get their kid off of them. So what kind of things, if you were to work through different ages and stages, you were just mentioning when they're really little, when they're in that kind of infant stage, like 6 months and stuff like that. What are some things that a parent could do to help when they start seeing their kid being so attached to one of the parents?
Yeah, so usually as a child develops, there are opportunities for mini separations between the child and their parent. So think, for example, when you go to the gas station, your baby's in the car seat, in the back seat, you get out of the car, you pump your gas, and then you get back in your car. In that moment, a young child has just experienced a short-term small exposure to separation. Another example is going to the grocery store. Let's say you get halfway down the aisle and you realize the cereal that you meant to grab was just a few steps behind you. You may turn your back for just a moment to reach for that box of cereal before putting it in your shopping cart, and your young child will have that exposure of having you take just a step back in a public place while you turn shortly to grab the item and come back.
But you still have everything under control where you're not leaving your kid 2 aisles away or anything like that. You're repeatedly giving them opportunities to know that you're coming back.
Exactly. And our development is like that. We build upon previous experiences to get better at things. And separation works just that way.
What if you have a toddler? Well, let's say somebody who's like 9 months to 12 months old, and all they want is mommy, 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 and dad can't even hold, it's like, is there something that you offer to parents that like, what else could you do to have it be daddy that takes over the baby, or grandma, or, some other loving caregiver, like you mentioned? Like, how can you set it up to reinforce that kind of situation where you're training, you're sort of like forcing yourselves to have opportunities to do that?
The first thing that comes to mind in that situation is to have that parent that the child is connected with hold the child and be there with the child. And then have that other trusted individual, like the dad or the grandparent, or even a little later in development, if it's a teacher, come nearby and be with that parent. Talk to the parent, sit with the parent, and you give the child the opportunity to stay with their trusted person while also having that exposure to that other individual that may, with a little bit of time, become another trusted individual that they feel safe and comfortable going with.
Uh-huh. So it seems like if you can start expanding the trusted circle is kind of what happens. It's like, I know that you and I had talked earlier about some parents who believe there is no circle, so the mom is always on duty all the time. She can't go anywhere because, there's going to be separation anxiety. It's like, it only in some way, we were talking about, sometimes it's the mom or the dad or whatever caregiver that can't give up the risk of their kid having a tantrum or crying for an hour or two or whatever. It's like, can you comment on like how to help parents kind of get through that guilt? I think of the word that comes to mind is.
Yeah. What I think about for that parent is that must be exhausting to really just be that sole person that a child can be with and be comfortable with. I know that it's hard. I'm a parent myself. And when we let our little ones out into the world, or we put them in the hands of another trusted adult, we can feel guilt, as you said. That's a good way that comes up for us. It's important for us as parents to remind ourselves that trusted adults are trusted adults. Other parents, grandparents, family members, they too have our children's best interest in mind. That teacher or daycare professional, their whole world, their life's work is being there to help build early education for our children or take care of children as their parents go about their jobs or their other daily activities. And in their life's work is their passion for doing what they do. And so if we as parents can trust that person, we're modeling that behavior for our children that shows them that they too can trust that person.
Yeah, and I think that modeling that you say is key because a lot of parents that I see either at church, I was talking to some kindergarten teachers as well, that's like the parent won't let go and won't trust. So then the kid doesn't learn to trust and just keeps clinging. and being able to practice. And I guess, like, have you had parents where you encourage them to talk directly to those other caregivers so that it's like, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to practice. We're going to, where you actually are upfront about it instead of like, oh, little Johnny, yep, he's going to cling to me. I'll just stay here in class and I'll just, or I'll stay at daycare. Do you have like have you ever come up with a plan for somebody that says, okay, this is the first day is like this, the second day might be like, any ideas like that?
Plans are a really good idea. Plans not only will help the child with some routine and consistency, but it'll also help take a little bit of that emotional pressure off the parent as well, because they can feel really good about having a plan. They know what to do. They know what they're going to do. Having play dates with other children or other parents, or with the teacher, a meet and greet with the teacher if that's possible, can be really helpful. Some other things that can be helpful are talking to the child if the child is old enough to have that conversation. A lot of times, the stress that we feel is really due to unmet expectations or being unsure of what to expect at all. So if you have a plan and you develop that alongside a teacher or another parent or caregiver, and you can talk to your child about it, let them know what a day at school is like or what a day at daycare is like. That way, everyone can be on the same page about what the day is going to look like, and there's no surprises.
Yeah, I like that. And there's no surprises for the parent as well as the kid.
And it can be so helpful for parents to know who their support system is. Do they have friends? Do they have a parent themselves that they can talk to and share some of these struggles of parenting with? To know that parents are not alone in this can give them so much courage as a parent to go forth and drop their child off with confidence, be able to say goodbye proudly and confidently at the door. So your child sees, oh, my parent's okay. That must mean that I'll be okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the other thing I was talking to, again, some teachers about is that what you're talking about modeling, like the parent confidently dropping the kid off and knowing that the parent actually might know that their kid's going to cry and that they're willing to say, like, I trust you, teacher. I trust you, church nursery school, person. I trust you that it's going to be okay and that you'll call me if things aren't going to be okay. But I just love that. Just reiterating, it's like we do have to model that separation, and the more we give into it and give into that parent guilt, the harder it is. I was talking to you about a friend who was a teacher who it was a second grader who wound up not being able to separate from his mom, and it was in the pandemic on top of it, and the mom wasn't supposed to come into the classroom and everything, and the mom just refused to listen to the teacher, like, please just leave him off. And she's like, no, he's my last one. I'm going to do whatever I want. And that really hurt the teacher's ability to teach the other kids in the class because the kid was so demanding of her time and energy. And that, and the teacher was trying to deal with the parent. And at that point, I think they had to bring in the principal and, have more meetings with the parent and stuff like that. But can be really hard on the teachers when the parents won't let go. And it makes it hard on the kids too. How about as the kids grow, like you said that it's normal to have a lot of this separation anxiety when they're younger, and a lot of us have experienced that. What about they're going to kindergarten, and they're really getting a little older and they're still experiencing a lot of that? How does separation anxiety relate to anxiety in general? Like, is there any guides that that you have? I know that you had said that we should put in a disclaimer about, which maybe you want to explain it now.
Yeah, it's important for parents that are listening to know that this information is not intended to be medical or mental health treatment advice. It's important to talk to your child's doctor or their therapist about concerns you're having about their mental health. In fact, in the show notes, we can put the phone number for 24/7 National Helpline if you have questions or concerns about your child or their mental health.
Yeah. So what if like, is there something that a parent can say, like, oh, when is it like kind of normal that my kids have separation anxiety, and when is it getting to be abnormal, so I better be talking to my pediatrician or mental health professional or something like that? Like, got any guidelines for parents of when that is?
Yeah, that's a great question. Typically, separation anxiety can be brought on by transition or change. So, you mentioned going to kindergarten. That sometimes can be quite a jump from the preschool environment they were comfortable and familiar with. And it's not unusual to see an uptick of separation anxiety features. Really, what parents want to be thinking about is, at what level is your child's day being affected, as well as the day of those around them? So it's okay to have anxiety. It is normal to feel our feelings. It's okay to feel our feelings. We want to feel our feelings. We just don't want them to get too big so that they interfere with our happiness, our ability to access our education, play with our friends, and experience everything that a day has to offer in that child's life.
That's a good metric, sort of like how much is it taking away from their ability to live their life.
Yeah.
And also, how much is it taking away for the ability of the parent to live their life?
Yeah.
Like, the kid might be happy. I was talking to another parent who has a, I think he's in 3rd to 4th grade now.
Mm-hmm.
And he had separation anxiety, but it's kind of turned into more anxiety with going to school because he's not connecting. And so what's sort of the difference between, like, your kid doesn't want to go someplace because they don't like it versus they're afraid of being separated? Is there any clinical distinction there or anything that you'd say?
Yeah, what comes to mind for me is going back to individual differences. And some children are just more naturally outgoing. Some children are just more naturally on the quiet or shy side. And there's nothing pathological about being quiet or shy or reserved. It really has to do with everyone in that family system and how comfortable they're sitting with it. We all have everyday ups and downs. But one thing that parent can be asking themselves is, at the end of their day, given their family's ups and downs, are they okay with how they handled it, how it went, how their child coped in those moments of stress or pressure? A separation anxiety is okay to have. But was the disruption to that point where maybe that parent was late to work, or they are late to work because they have to stay a little bit longer? If the child can't settle down after being in that environment for a little while, that's when it's time to reach out to a professional for help or talk to the teacher and make a plan. It's important for parents to know that children don't come to therapy just because something's wrong or something's broken or something needs to be fixed. It's okay to come just to fine tune those little things that are happening in our lives, those little everyday ups and downs that we could use some tools for. We could use a little bit of support in navigating those moments. Therapy can be really helpful for those moments as well.
Yeah, and I think we talk more about adults getting therapy, I think, than kids, because we think they're supposed to be resilient and can handle everything, and that we're supposed to be miracle parent, magical parents and solving every problem. And oftentimes we wind up making the situation worse by by not reaching out. I mean, that's part of why I do what I do. It's like if I can help a parent get through life a little bit easier, it helps their kid in the long run. And getting a resource for kids when they're dealing with tough stuff. What a great resource. What a wonderful resource. Are there other things about separation anxiety that you feel that we should cover?
Yes, I'd really like to talk about ways to practice separation at home that families can bring in if their child is experiencing separation anxiety at school.
Great. And what do you got? I'm sure they're all ears now.
So, one of the best things that parents can do is help expose their child to separation. And you want to start with the smallest, least threatening thing about separating as possible. So, if you're able to have a conversation with your child, can they talk about separating? Can you reflect with your child about times when they did separate? Can you look for exceptions? Can you compliment your child and say, wow, it was so great that other day when I dropped you off, I saw you see your friend and walk right over. That was really a great moment. Can you talk about a parent's upcoming business meeting? Now, I know many of us are working from home, and I do think that some of that has contributed to this increase in separation anxiety that children are experiencing. Pre-pandemic,
For sure.
had a lot.
For sure.
Yeah, pre-pandemic, kids had a lot of experience of dad going to work, mom going to work, going to a full-time, full-day school environment. And a lot of kids right now have missed some of the opportunity to experience that exposure of separation. So can your child talk about an upcoming separation? Can you have a conversation and say, mommy's going to go to the grocery store and you're going to stay here with your cousin. Your cousin's going to watch you for a little bit while I go run some errands. Is it okay to have that conversation? If it is, that's great. Then you can move to the next level, which is actually practicing the separation itself. Practicing those little trips, talking to your child about it, letting them know it's going to happen, actually going through with it, and then really complimenting your child when, they did a great job and it was okay. If it's not okay.
Yeah, it's like that's when I was like, okay, they did. The cousin's watching them and they cried the whole time, and then mom comes home. What happens now?
Yeah, so we want to do more of what works and less of what doesn't. So we come up with a plan, we give it a go, and if it works, that's great. That's what we want. But if it doesn't, that's okay. We take a couple steps backwards and we go back to that moment when we could talk about it or sit with it or read a book about it or find their favorite TV character. And as you're watching Paw Patrol together and you notice that one of the pups heads out the door, make a comment about what you're seeing. Say, I noticed that Marshall, the fire dog, just leaped on out of the clubhouse and he's feeling really happy about it. And through that exposure, your child will start to say, yeah, you're right. Maybe I can do that too.
Mm-hmm. Or you could work with your child, it sounds like, too, to come up with, it didn't work out with cousin watching you. Is there somebody else?
Yeah.
Like asking them for feedback. I am surprised sometimes when I give a suggestion, like, did you ask your kid? And they're like, no, I didn't. And then they ask, and it just works out fabulously because the parent actually asked. And it could be, no, but I really like cousin Lucy. I just don't like cousin Johnny, or something like that. It's like, or, I want to be with daddy or grandpa instead of grandma or something like that. So great suggestions.
I'm so glad you brought that up. I'm so glad you brought that up because a lot of times the adults in the child's life are coming up with all these really wonderful plans about how to help this child that's experiencing the separation anxiety. And sometimes it's overlooked how important it is to talk to the child about it. and really see if there's a way that that school could be a little bit more warm and cozy for them. Sometimes a child will feel separation anxiety walking into a new environment because of this sensory overload, because it's really stimulating. So sometimes it can be helpful for a child to be the first one there. And then the other students kind of gradually come in afterwards. Sometimes the child likes to be the last one there. And you wouldn't know that, again, with those individual differences, unless you ask or unless you try. Sometimes we go through a little bit of what I like to call experimental parenting. And that's when we come up with an idea and we give it a go and we see if it works.
Yeah. I like it. One of the teacher people that I talked to about separation anxiety, she had I think like a kindergarten first grader or whatever that wound up being, she created a little safe space in the classroom for him that he knew every day he could start off his day in that safe space. Yeah. It took them quite a while to discover that that's what he needed to start his day. But once they did, it's like, oh my gosh, she could teach again. She could, release herself to that, to the rest of the class, which is amazing. What creativity for the teacher and the parent to be able to know that their kid was going to be okay, even if they, had tried other things and that wasn't working. Just keep on trying, be creative. I think parenting is a lot about how creative you are. That's
be
for sure.
Creative.
Anything else you want?
Well, being creative, and with a child, you want to engage different parts of the child's lived experience. So one of the things we just talked about was talking to the child about it. That's using that two-way verbal communication to gather the child's thoughts and feelings about something through talking with them about it. Sometimes talking to a child about what to expect or what's going to happen in their day can be very helpful and useful. But sometimes it can also be really helpful to check in with those other sensory experiences as well. So is the child comfortable? Are they cozy in their clothes? Do they have a favorite jacket? Are they able to bring a lovey or a stuffy with them? Or have a Hot Wheel in their pocket or in their cubby or backpack? Can that teacher have some kind of object that the child associates with comfort and calm? Can there be a space where the child, a cozy corner that they can go to feel comforted? Do they have a favorite smell? Can they wear one of mommy's socks to school? That's a fun one that kids like, that they can feel that connection with their
Good
parents.
one. I like that. Yeah. I know sometimes with nighttime anxiety, separation anxiety, some parents let them sleep in dad's T-shirt or something like that so that they feel like mom or dad is right next to them. But what a great ideas. Great ideas. Anything else?
It's so important to do what works for the family. I know that we're here on a podcast and people listening in are listening to a podcast, but sometimes I talk to parents about putting aside the blogs, putting aside the podcasts and the textbooks and the magazine article that they read, and just really think about what's going on for their child. There's no podcast or blog or textbook that was written for their child or about their child. And so for that parent to think about who their child is, who their family is, and what works for that family. If a child is having separation anxiety at night and is having nightmares and is unable to go to sleep, but if the parents build a little nest on the floor and read a book, then that child has an easier time going to sleep. Go with what works. And you're not going to mess up your child's development or their independence in their adult years if you meet them where they're at. Hold that space for your child and yourself to do the best you can with what you have to work with. And sometimes that means being creative.
Yeah, and staying in tune. I love that. Love that idea. All right. Well, Jessica, thanks so much for joining me. What great insights that you have given to us. I'm just really appreciative of you being here. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.
I'm gonna put a link to your website as well as that mental health number in the show notes. And hopefully we'll take some of your other notes and put them up on my blog too, so that people can have access to them. But thanks so much for being here, and we will have a blessed rest of your day.
Thank you so much.